Hey guys, Bluefin100 back again with another video. Now, I've been wanting to talk about this series for a while now, ever since I did my Beyblade review RANT and Thoughts series, and when they announced this series was making a return this year, and so it piqued my interest on doing this video. And the series I'm going to talk about is Bakugan. Now, before I get into the topic of the video, I did grow up with Bakugan when it was first released 12 years ago. I grew up watching the first two seasons like I did with Beat'em, and I loved it. But then I just lost interest after the third season and halfway through the second season. As a kid, I thought this was awesome, which it was, but looking back at it, I just found it to be a knockoff of Beyblade and Digimon. Bakugan has always been sort of in the shadow of Beyblade, aka the original trilogy, and this actually took 2 years after the original Beyblade's conclusion in North America, so I assumed when Bakugan first came out here, people would think that this was just a knockoff of Beyblade or something because of the similar characters and elements they have. Also, Bakugan was like the poor man's version of Beyblade, kind of like Godzilla and Gamera or Transformers and GoBots. Unlike with various other animes, Bakugan did not have a manga, well, sort of. It was released after the series release, and it only had one manga volume. Anyways, I'm probably sure you guys already know what the series is about, but if you don't know, well, I'll let the intro speak for itself.
My whole world changed one day when all these random cards started raining down everywhere. At first, they seemed harmless enough. So a bunch of us kids invented this cool new game. That's when we realized those cards weren't so harmless after all. They were packed with incredible powers from another world.
Yeah, that's pretty much what they do throughout the series. But what they didn't mention in the intro, and I'm going to read this off from the wiki, is that the Battle Brawlers must assist in the battle between good and evil in a parallel universe. As they learn more about the cards, they discover more about the power struggle in the alternate universe of New Vestroia, and do their utmost to help the Bakugan there win the day. Doesn't that sound familiar to you? Yeah, it sounds like Digimon's plot, doesn't it? The whole alternate universe thing and saving the monster's planet, and instead of Digimon, it's Bakugan. Apparently the series didn't do so well in Japan, but it was successful here in North America and became really popular in the mid to late 2000s and the early 2010s. Now, like with Beyblade and Beat'em, I did collect the toys when I was younger, and looking back, the toys were pretty damn cool. The whole rolling the ball onto the cards thing was cool, and the designs of the Bakugan toys were really unique. As for the Bakugan monsters themselves, well, they were basically just ripoffs of the Bit Beast from Beyblade. Drago was just a ripoff of Dragoon, Skyrus was like Dronzer, and Tigrera was like a mix of Drigger and Galax. Now, I know what a lot of you might be thinking, but Bluef, Bakugan and Beyblade aren't the same, so therefore it's not a ripoff of Beyblade. Yes, I know it's not, but like I said earlier, Bakugan pretty much copied its characters and a bit of its story elements from Beyblade, and also copied its plot from Digimon. Dan is basically like a mix between Tai and Tyson. As for the other characters, well, you probably should know what they're similar to with the Beyblade characters, and hell, maybe the Digimon characters. Now, Bakugan had 4 seasons, which were Bakugan Battle Brawlers, or just Bakugan, and sometimes referred to as Bakugan Season 1, New Vestroia, Gundalian Invaders, and its final season, Mectanium Surge, which apparently never aired in Japan, but was only aired in Canada and America. The series aired on TV Tokyo in Japan, Cartoon Network in America, and Teletoon in Canada, which is where I watched it. When the series was brought to North America, it was dubbed by Nelvana, the same company that dubbed the original Beyblade trilogy and the Beyblade Metal Saga. They also dubbed the Powered by Beyblade series, but who cares about that garbage? Anyways, in the dub of Bakugan, a lot of the characters also did voices for Beyblade, like Dan, who is voiced by Scott McCord, is the same voice as Tetsuya, aka the worst character in Beyblade. Drago, who is voiced by Jason Deline, voices Benkei. Shun, who is voiced by Zachary Bennett, is the same voice as Leon. Runo, who is voiced by Julie Lemieux, voices Mariah, Dizzy, Miss Kincaid, Osimo, Kenta's fat friend, and voices the extras in Beyblade. Marucho, who is voiced by Joanne Venicola, voices Johnny. Julie, who is voiced by Katie Griffin, voices Matilda, Ashley, and Hikaru. And finally, Masquerade, voiced by Leon Smith, voices Andrew, Michael, and Hyoma. I actually never noticed that until I got a little older. Like various other animes, since the series was successful, it produced, of course, various seasons, video games, toys, merchandise, etc., etc. And for some reason, they even made these bizarre combinations between Bakugan and Marvel. Yeah, remember those? They also had a spin-off series called Bakutech Bakugan and a second season called Bakutech Bakugan Gaichi. Unlike its predecessor, this one actually had a manga series and became an anime later on. I don't know why this wasn't brought here to North America, but Who knows? But regardless, nobody gave a shit about that series. Just like the Powered by Beyblade series. The Bakugan theme song was pretty good, and the artists who did the Bakugan theme are the same people who did Rise Above the Storm from Beyblade. They would keep using the same theme song for each season, and I'm glad it was different from its original Japanese version and wasn't just a translated English theme, aka what the Beyblade Metal Saga did. Now with Bakugan, they had different elements, or worlds as they would call it, like Pyrus, which is fire, Chaos, correct me if I mispronounce it wrong, which is light, Aquos, which is water, Ventus, which is wind, Subterra, which is earth, and finally Darkest, which is of course darkness. And these 6 elements are what the characters have for their Bakugan. Now if you guys don't know the characters and don't know about them, their names are Dan, which is basically, like I said, a mix between Tyson and Tai, and he's the leader of the group. Shun, which is the rival and the lone wolf of the series, you know, like every other anime. Marucho, the computer nerd of the group. Bruno, who is a tomboy but really doesn't really look like a tomboy. Julie, who is the girly girl of the group and the second girl in the team. And finally Alice, who pretty much knows everything about Bakugan besides Marucho. And also she's Masquerade. So yeah, big spoiler there, whoever hasn't seen the series. So overall, Bakugan did well here, but in my opinion, it wasn't that popular as compared to other kid anime series that came prior to this, like Pokemon, Digimon, Yu-Gi-Oh, and of course Beyblade. Would I call Bakugan a good anime series? Not really, because it does have its flaws like Beyblade. Would I call it bad? No, of course not. I never thought it was good, and I'm not saying it's bad or terrible, but it was still enjoyable and entertaining to watch back in the day. So looking back, Bakugan to me is just a mediocre anime series. It's not as bad as the Beyblade Metal Saga or hell, even the Powered by Beyblade series. It's just okay. It's not bad. It's not really good. It's just okay. I give the original Bakugan series a C+. It's one of those anime series that I grew up watching, but looking back, it's pretty ridiculous. Now, the Bakugan reboot, on the other hand, is Now, as I've said previously, I never thought the Bakugan series was good. I mean, it is good in some areas, and I did enjoy the first season back in the day, but as I grew older, I just lost interest during the second and third season. So for what it is, Bakugan wasn't a bad series. It's dated, but it was good at the time. The reboot, on the other hand, is piss poor compared to the original. I'm not going to act like the original was good because, like I said, it wasn't, but the new reboot makes the original Bakugan series a masterpiece. The new character designs just remind me of Turning Mech Card mixed with the new Ben 10, and they're just so generic looking compared to the original. And the reason why they don't really look like anime drawn characters is because this reboot was only exclusive to North America and wasn't made by Japanese people. Oh, there are some Japanese people behind this, but other than that, this was just made and exclusive for North America, which is more of a reason why this reboot was a bad idea. The CGI for the Bakugan monsters just looks terrible. I'll admit, CGI in anime doesn't always look good, unless if it's like Transformers or something. But with this, it just looks really bad. At least with Turning Mech Card CG, it looks a lot better than this. But again, that's not saying much. Now with the theme song, it sounds terrible. And I know I say this a lot with almost every new anime that came out in the 2010s, but hear me out. They literally sound the same, and most of them are either translated themes from Japanese to English, or they make the genre of the theme song fit into the trending music type. For example, when the Metal Saga came out, they made rap/hip-hop type of songs because rap was the genre everyone started to listen to when 2010 started. And in my honest opinion, it doesn't really suit the show, or even anime in general. It doesn't exactly have that feel where you get hyped up for the show, or even the games, unlike how rock with its upbeat tempo and thrilling melody gave us. Especially early 2000s rock with the strong vocals and revving electric guitar. Now onto the animation. It just looks so weird and definitely looks like Turning Mech Card. To be honest, the new animation style for some animes now, it just looks laggy and piss poor compared to how old animes looked and some modern ones as well. It just gives me a headache watching it. Also, the animation for the new Bakugan is almost on the same boat as the Pokemon Sun and Moon anime. Now the characters, they look 5 times younger than what the original characters look. I mean, yeah, they are kids, but everyone knows anime characters are not supposed to look their age. I'll give you a prime example. So the main character in this series is still Dan, which is good, but it's not the same Dan we knew and grew up with. This one, on the other hand, is a baby compared to the original Dan. The original Dan looked badass and the typical, quirky, passionate main character in anime. The new one, on the other hand, just looks like a weak and wimpy joke. Hashtag not my Dan. And his character design looks a bit similar, don't you think?
Coincidence? I think not!
His Bakugan is still Drago, which is also good, and he's still voiced by Jason Deline. Unfortunately, he's not enough to make the show good. The next character is another one we know, and that is Shun. But again, it's not the same one we knew. This one doesn't have black hair. Shun's black hair represented his dark personality. You know, the whole rival slash best friend slash more talented sidekick character you have in every anime. Although this isn't really a huge problem, it just takes out the whole image of the character. Also, this one doesn't have Skyrus, and he now has Aquos type Bakugan. I know in the later seasons he doesn't have Skyrus as his main anymore, but since this is a reboot, they should have at least kept Skyrus as his main Bakugan. You know, if you wanted Dan to keep Drago in this, why not do the same for Shun? This new version of Shun looks like a younger version of Maximilian Pegasus. Hashtag not my Shun. The next two main characters don't have original counterparts, so in other words, I don't really care about them. But I will tell you their names. The girl is Leah, and she is a brawler like Bruno, Julie, and Alice, obviously. Winton, who is the only black guy in the group. Also, one of the brawlers is a dog. What is this, Pokemon? Thank God it doesn't talk. There are more characters in this series, but I'll briefly mention them. There's Benton Dusk, China Riot, Magnus Black, who is basically the new Masquerade, and like Masquerade, he uses Darkest type Bakugan. Philomena Dusk, who is the sister of Benton, Strata the Hunter, and the last 5 characters are A, B, C, D, and E. Seriously? What kind of names are those? Just watching the first 5 episodes of this show makes me want to watch the original seasons instead of watching this trash. The series is poorly paced when it gets to a new episode. Each episode consists of 13 minutes or so, which is basically the length of every Cartoon Network show nowadays, and it just feels short. Anime episodes or shows aren't supposed to be short, unless if it's Pop Team Epic. So why couldn't they just make the episode 24 minutes long? They gotta follow that dumb rule in the new Cartoon Network that every new show has to be 13 minutes long, which is ridiculous. The company that dubbed and created this series is none other than Nelvana Enterprise. Yeah. The company who didn't want to dub Beyblade anymore or any other anime decided to dub the new Bakugan and be the producers of it. Like the original seasons, this reboot aired on Teletoon, Cartoon Network, and for the first time on Shit TV. I mean YTV. Now the new Bakugan toys are pretty much the same and still have the same gimmick from the original ones. And they still look pretty good. The only thing they changed was the elements for the Bakugan. Before we had Pyrus, Chaos, Aquos, Ventus, Subterra, and Darkus. Now they replaced Subterra with Airless and a new element slash attribute called Diamond. A few things I've heard from fans is that the spring mechanics from the toys are now way more complicated than they used to be. I wouldn't know the difference between those and their original counterparts because I haven't bought any of the new ones yet. The same time they released the toys, Spin Master, the company who's in charge of the toys and the series, released the Bakugan cards separately in TCG form for the first time. Now this is something I kind of like because with the original, where it came with both the toy and 3 cards, which it still does by the way, this also released cards in booster packs like with other TCGs, and they called the first booster pack Battle Brawlers. Yeah. Also, another thing about the new toys is that for the cards, they no longer have magnetic features to them anymore. So what they have is this new hexagon thing. That's where you roll the Bakugan now instead of rolling it on the card. So overall, the new reboot is pretty much a disgrace to the whole franchise and shats all over the original series and the franchise. And I know I say this to almost every new anime series that's a continuation of an old anime, but it's true. The problem with this series is that it's a reboot to the original, the characters, the animation, and pretty much everything else. They don't even showcase or emphasize the Bakugan in their ball forms most of the time. And apparently, they don't even land on the gay cards anymore in the show. Like, what? That was the whole point of the show and the game. And now they decide to just scrap that? Now they just show a random explosion after the Bakugan is thrown. Is every new anime nowadays trying to be like Dragon Ball? Like, this needs to stop.
It's time to stop! It's time to stop, okay? No more!
Now there are some good things about this new reboot, like the toys are still good. I like how the Bakugan monsters still talk to their owners, and I do like how they still kept the same logo and font, which is what a lot of kid animes don't do nowadays. But the show on the other hand is trash. The new reboot is just a shadow of its predecessor. It just doesn't feel like a Bakugan season or even an anime. It just feels like another generic Cartoon Network or Teletoon show. And like I said before, I'm not going to act like the original Bakugan was good because it wasn't. But it's certainly better than this hunk of junk. I would probably put the Bakugan reboot in the worst anime category. It's also part of the worst / unnecessary reboots list. So in conclusion, this franchise just should have stayed dead after Mectanium Surge.